At 9:27 a.m. on December 13, 1943, Second Lieutenant Philip Adair pulled his Curtiss P-40 Warhawk into a climbing turn over Assam, India. Through the morning haze, 64 Japanese aircraft materialized 3 miles east, heading directly for his base at Dinjan Airfield. The 23-year-old Adair had flown 43 combat missions with the 80th Fighter Squadron, protecting the vital Hump airlift route over the Himalayas. But this morning, he was the only pilot airborne when the massive enemy formation appeared. In the previous 8 weeks, Japanese raids on Allied airfields throughout northeast India had destroyed 47 transport aircraft and killed 112 personnel. Below him, Dinjan Airfield housed 14 C-47 transport aircraft loaded with critical supplies for Chiang Kai-shek's forces in China, a field hospital treating 63 wounded soldiers, and fuel stock sufficient for 11 days of operations. If the bombers reached their target unopposed, the damage would cripple Allied supply operations for weeks. Adair's P-40, nicknamed Lulu Bell and marked with the number 44, carried 650 caliber Browning machine guns with enough ammunition for approximately 12 seconds of sustained fire. The enemy formation consisted of 24 Mitsubishi Ki-21 Sally bombers escorted by 40 Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar fighters arranged in protective layers. Standard doctrine called for fighter pilots to wait for reinforcements when outnumbered more than 5 to 1. Adair faced 64 to 1 odds. The nearest friendly fighters were 38 minutes away at Jorhat. He could radio for help and shadow the formation until support arrived. By then, bombs would already be falling, or he could attack alone. Adair pushed the throttle forward. His Allison V-1710 engine roared to life, manifold pressure climbing to 54 inches. The P-40 accelerated to 320 miles per hour as he positioned himself 4,000 feet above the bomber formation, using the sun to mask his approach. The Oscar escorts hadn't spotted him yet, their attention focused forward on the target. The Lade bomber group flew in tight formation, 6 aircraft arranged in 2 Vs. Adair rolled inverted, pulled the nose down, and dove from their 7 o'clock high position. Airspeed built rapidly, 340, 360, 380 miles per hour. The Allison engine screamed at full power. At 800 yards, he opened fire. His 650s hammered out their deadly rhythm. Tracers arced toward the lead bomber, walking up the Sally's left wing. Fabric tore, metal sparked. The bomber's port engine erupted in orange flame, black smoke pouring from the cowling. The tight formation broke apart, bombers scattering left and right. Adair pulled up hard, 7 Gs crushing him into his seat, and rolled right. 40 Oscar fighters were diving toward him. The Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar was one of the most maneuverable fighters in the Pacific theater. Powered by a 1,150 horsepower engine, it could execute turning circles tighter than any American fighter. Its butterfly combat flaps allowed it to bleed speed rapidly without stalling, an advantage Japanese pilots exploited ruthlessly. Adair's P-40 was faster in straight flight, but couldn't match the Oscar's turn rate. Standard tactics were simple. Never turn with them, use speed, hit and run, extend away, reset. But Adair couldn't extend. If he fled, the bombers would reform and complete their attack. He had to keep pressure on the formation. The first 4 Oscars came at him in loose formation. Adair rolled left, pulled up, and fired a 2-second burst at the lead fighter. His rounds missed high. The Oscars broke away. 2 more dove from above. He reversed, climbing left, fired again. No hits. His ammunition counter showed 800 rounds remaining. Behind the fighter screen, the Sally bombers were attempting to reform. 3 groups of 6 aircraft each were closing back into formation. If they achieved their bombing V again, they would press the attack. Adair had perhaps 90 seconds before they reached their release point. He rolled out, shoved the throttle to the stop, and dove toward the bombers again. 8 Oscars followed. The P-40 accelerated to 405 miles per hour, too fast for the Japanese fighters to match. Adair pulled out at bomber altitude and lined up on the right-hand formation. At 300 yards, he fired. Tracers converged on the lead bomber's right engine. The radial exploded in a fireball. The bomber rolled right, streaming fire and debris, its wingman breaking formation to avoid collision. Adair kicked rudder, skidded left, fired at another Sally. His rounds punched through the bomber's thin fuselage. His fuel gauge showed 162 gallons. Ammunition counter, 650 rounds. The bombers were 19 miles from Dinjan, 4 minutes from drop range. Then his engine started overheating. The Allison V-1710 was liquid-cooled. At combat power settings above 50 inches manifold pressure, it generated extreme temperatures. The cooling system was designed for approximately 20 minutes of sustained operation at those settings. Adair had been running at full power for 11 minutes. His coolant temperature gauge showed 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal operating temperature was 210. At 250, the engine would begin to fail. Adair kept the throttle forward. 2 Oscars came head-on, closing speed exceeding 600 miles per hour. Both fighters opened fire at 500 yards. Adair saw 7mm tracers walking toward his nose. He fired back. His heavier .50 caliber rounds carried more energy. At 350 yards, his rounds hit the left Oscar's engine cowling. The lightweight fighter shuddered, broke left, trailing white coolant vapor. The Sally bombers were 15 miles from target. 2 formations had reformed into bombing V's. Adair went for the lead formation again, diving past 6 intercepting Oscars at 390 miles per hour. At bomber altitude, he opened fire on the lead Sally. His burst hit the bomber's wing root. The wing structure failed. The outer panel folded upward and tore away. The Sally rolled inverted and entered a spin. The formation scattered. Their bombing accuracy was destroyed. Even if they dropped now, their bombs would spread across miles of jungle instead of concentrated on the airfield. Adair pulled up. His coolant temperature gauge showed 248 degrees. The engine was running rough, vibration increasing through the control stick. 8 Oscars dove on him. He rolled left, too slow. 7.7mm rounds punched through his right wing. One hit his right aileron control cable. Another burst walked up his fuselage, rounds sparking off the engine cowling. One penetrated the coolant reservoir. Green coolant sprayed across his windscreen. The temperature gauge climbed past 260 degrees. Steam erupted from cowling seams. Oil pressure dropped. The Allison was dying. Then the engine caught fire. Adair had perhaps 30 seconds before fuel lines ignited and the aircraft exploded. Standard procedure was immediate shutdown and bailout, but he was only 8,000 feet over hostile territory, 12 miles from friendly lines. He pulled the mixture control back, starving the engine of fuel. The fire intensity decreased. He pushed the mixture forward again. The engine caught, continued, running rough. Power output had dropped to 60%. The Sally bombers were breaking off, heading southeast toward Burma. The raid was broken. The airfield was safe. But Adair still had to get home on a burning, damaged engine, 43 miles to Nagarguli. 6 Oscars followed as his oil pressure dropped to 0. Without oil pressure, metal ground against metal. The engine vibration increased. Power fell further. His airspeed dropped to 180 miles per hour. Stall speed was 120. 1 Oscar pulled alongside, close enough to see the pilot's face. The Japanese pilot gestured downward. Land, surrender, become a prisoner. Adair ignored him. At 6,000 feet, smoke began filling his cockpit from severed electrical wiring. He slid the canopy open. At 4,000 feet, his right aileron cable snapped. The aileron flopped to full deflection. The P-40 rolled right, nose dropping into an uncontrolled dive. Then Adair had an idea that defied all logic. The damaged aileron was forcing the right wing down. But if he flew inverted, it would force the right wing up instead. At 1,800 feet, Adair rolled completely inverted. The nose came up. The descent slowed. He was climbing, flying upside down. The fuel system struggled to feed the inverted engine. He rolled upright. Immediately the damaged controls pushed the nose down. He descended 300 feet, then rolled inverted again. The pattern repeated, upside down to climb, right side up to let fuel feed properly. Flip, climb, flip, descend. The 6 Oscars watched this impossible display. A burning P-40 alternately flying inverted and upright, refusing to die. They turned east toward Burma. Adair spotted Nagarguli ahead, but faced a new problem. His landing gear was hydraulic. With minimal engine power, the hydraulic pump wasn't generating sufficient pressure. He grabbed the manual backup pump, wrapping his lap belt around the control stick to hold it steady while he pumped with both hands. After 28 strokes, the gear extended. 2 miles from the runway, his engine quit. From 2,000 feet, he could glide 3 miles, but the runway was only 2 miles away. He rolled inverted again, extending his glide in a maneuver no instructor had ever taught. Tower operators watched an inverted P-40 approaching with landing gear extended. At 200 feet, 300 yards from the threshold, Adair rolled upright. The damaged controls immediately tried to crash him. He fought the aircraft, forcing it toward the runway. The main wheels hit hard. 7 Gs. The right gear collapsed. The aircraft ground-looped, spinning 180 degrees in a shower of sparks. Adair climbed out as fire crews arrived. They counted the damage. 23 bullet holes, severed control cables, destroyed engine. Every cylinder showed catastrophic scoring. 3 connecting rods were welded to the crankshaft. The aircraft would never fly again. But Philip Adair had saved Dinjan Airfield. All 24 Sally bombers had turned back without dropping ordnance. 0 bombs hit Allied facilities. 0 ground casualties. The Hump airlift continued uninterrupted. 3 days later, flight surgeons discovered carbon monoxide levels in Adair's blood that should have rendered him unconscious. He had flown the final 11 minutes through willpower alone. On January 8, 1944, Lieutenant General Joseph Stilwell presented Adair with the Silver Star. The citation read, "For gallantry in action against enemy forces when Lieutenant Adair, flying alone, engaged and disrupted a formation of 64 enemy aircraft. One pilot, one obsolete fighter, 64 enemy aircraft. Philip Adair proved that impossible odds mean nothing when someone refuses to quit."